So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and today we are on CARN DUM, and we're seeing a side of CARN DUM that we've never seen before, which is the wintry version of it, or at least a wintry version where all of the buildings are covered in snow, at least apart from the walls that are destructible, which cannot be covered in snow. But regardless, it is a veritable winter wonderland. Just imagining the Witch King singing that song from Frozen, and that's quite the thought, and I'm going to choose to imagine that is how this came to pass. But the Witch King himself is going to be heading up this defence, I believe, because Angmar is going to be at its centre, flanked by some Variags of Khand, who are a long way from home, and Mordor, who of course, his Dark Master, the Witch King, has elected to send some support his way. So it is going to be a good versus evil siege with evil on the defence this time. We'll go through the attackers first and foremost. One of the attacking armies did send me this battle replay, so that's good. Starting off here with Thanatos, who is playing as the Dwarves of Khazad-Dum. We haven't seen the Dwarves actually in quite some time, so it's actually nice to see them again. The Dwarves are very, very good in this sort of situation as well. CARN DUM has got a few open spaces which you can use against the Dwarves if you're the defenders. But generally speaking, in a siege where the battles are slow, where survivability is very important and you need to be tanky, the Dwarves are very, very good at that. Especially, I have to say, Khazad-Dum, because their melee prowess is that much better than the Dwarves of Erebor. Erebor have got better supporting tools, but I have to say, like, crossbows are going to be quite difficult to use super effectively on CARN DUM if the defenders do this properly. So I think Khazad-Dum are actually the better pick. Excuse me. Generally speaking. He's got some Orc Hunters of Khazad-Dum, who, you know, they're a decent archer. They're not actually as heavily armoured as most other units from Khazad-Dum are, but they'll still do the job, and in terms of damage, they can actually out-damage most other regular archers anyway. Khand have got a few good archers that could probably out-skirmish them. I think the nomadic infantry could probably outlast them, and certainly in terms of numbers they have what it takes, but they'll probably be committed later, or at least they should be committed later. Dwarven miners, just to pad things out, obviously on the attack you're going to have to cut corners somewhere, and miners is how Khazad-Dum could do that. Among militia, to be fair, they're still pretty decent. Armour piercing, they're one of the only shock infantry, if not the only shock infantry militia unit in the game, depending on how you define that. But yeah, very nice indeed. Obviously they're going to die in droves to the right sort of ranged units, and they won't be able to defeat really genuinely high quality defending units, but it's a good way to pad your army out, and they are armour piercing, of course. Got some 3rd Legion with the armour upgrade. They're a very, very fine unit of line infantry, especially with the armour upgrade. As you'd expect from the Dwarves, this is the sort of thing they do very nicely. Warriors of Khazad-Dum are the slightly lower tier variation, but even so, they're still better than many other factions' regular line infantry units. You could even make the argument that they're better than Elven equivalents because they have better armour, and line infantry, the main thing you want from your line infantry is survivability, especially with the regular units. And the Elven units do tend to lose a bit of the armour. Even the Mighty Imladris' line infantry units don't have the most, so it's all a matter of personal preference. When it comes to melee killing power, the Elves have the edge, but in terms of overall defence, I think the Dwarves might have them beat there. My voice is already on the decline because I've done 2 streams in a row, and now recording this. Sons of the Fallen, very tanky unit of spears, a very good unit in this situation. Orc Hunters of Khazad-Dum, several more units of warriors. Nice to see the sentries as well for some pike support. I'm actually surprised not to see the 1st Legion because they are so powerful, but he has instead elected to spend his elite money essentially on stuff like the Guards of Khazad-Dum here with their armour piercing attacks, upgraded 4th Legion, Hammers of Gundabad. It's got some more upgraded 3rd Legion back here, more upgraded 3rd Legion, and some upgraded 2nd Legion as well. So all of the legions except the 1st are here. And he's gone for the armour piercing bodyguard as well in the Guards of Khazad-Dum. Now for the player who sent me this battle replay, which is Vivorax, who is playing as Gondor, so another heavy metal faction certainly. Upgraded Gondor infantry pushing up some of the siege towers. He has got his armour piercing polearm in the Fountain Guard, which is a very good choice for pretty much any battle. Like, Gondor are not fully reliant on them in the way they used to be in older versions of Reforged, but it is still, to be honest with you, probably Gondor's most reliable unit to bring, outside of bodyguard tier units. More Gondor infantry here en masse with the armour upgrades, as have the Gondor Spearmen got their armour upgrades, so this is obviously the main strength behind Gondor, because in terms of melee damage, the infantry and especially the spears of course don't tend to be the most punishing, but if you upgrade their armour, which doesn't cost an awful lot as Gondor, they do become far tankier, and that is a very useful thing to have when you're on the attack in a siege like this. Hopefully my voice holds together. At least hopefully I can like blow off the rust here a little bit, otherwise this is going to be a long battle indeed for my voice. Gondor catapult as well, so The catapult is useful both for attacking enemy units and of course for peeling away the outer layers of the walls. More Gondor spearmen, some fountain guard here, Athelian rangers. Got some Citadel Guard as well for the armour-piercing attacks, which is very, very nice. Obviously, they're a really good unit, to be honest with you. Very expensive, but worth every penny. And also some Nimlothian Honour Guard and Pelargian Marines back here. This is obviously the effectively the bodyguard version, a sort of hybridisation of the Fountain Guard and the Citadel Guard, and then adding an extra hit point on. Fantastic unit all around. And he's sending a unit of Gondor Spearmen off this way as well. This army here is, I think... Yeah, the only thing we can see from Joey 1 Kenobi's army, I think, is this unit of Ents, which leads me to believe... No, they're not his general's bodyguard unit, so where are the rest of Mirkwood? There they are. On the borderline with one another's deployment zones over here, but the rest of Mirkwood are here. Hiriath, I was going to say, it'd be very bizarre not to bring any of these heavier Mirkwood units to a siege, especially when you're on the attack. Upgraded Hiriath, very nice unit of line infantry, really good in melee, nice shield value as well. But they are few in number, so they are one of the things which is likely to be targeted down. Hiriak as well, very nice unit of heavier spears. Hiri Lung, again the heavy swordsman, so in the late game in particular their damage could be priceless. Elven King's Palace Guard with the armour upgrade as well, obviously a brutal unit of infantry, ever the fan favourite. And the Hiri Peng are back here as well. Interesting actually, the Hiri Peng are the ones that haven't been upgraded. They would have been my first choice for upgrading units, to be honest with you, because it allows you to skirmish more efficiently with the enemy. Unless you're planning on being hyper-aggressive, which, to be honest with you, Mirkwood players rarely are hyper-aggressive, I have to say, outside of a few examples. But for the most part, especially in a siege like this, I'd imagine Mirkwood to really hang back and be the conservative ones, because that's how Elven players often do things when they're in a siege. We'll see. There's also a unit of Hiriak pushing this ram here. We have Rohan, played by Mevin as well, which is an interesting inclusion to a siege. Obviously no phalanx units, much like Mirkwood. Westmark spears. We have some Riddermark archers, so a variation here. Obviously lots of basic units that Rohan can bring, which will be useful. The shield maidens are obviously going to be one of the most useful units Rohan have, because they can, really do a good job against unshielded units, high damage. Medicelled Guard can do a good job against anything they throw their javelins into, though of course they are smaller in number and they will attract a lot of attention when they move forward. The Helm's Hammers, really nice unit of AP shielded infantry. Westmark infantry over here as well, Westmark marshals, so actually quite a lot of higher end units, I have to say, lots of Westmark units. There are a few Riddermark spearmen as well. There is also a unit of Riddermark skirmishers, which I like this inclusion from Mevin. This is a sign that he's intending to effectively try and counteract anything that comes outside of the walls cavalry wise, because obviously it's melee cavalry with javelins. Excellent for hunting that sort of thing down. And there is some Eastmark spears as well, but largely a higher end Rohan army, I have to say, which is risky. It depends on how well the defenders can focus an army like that down. And finally, Numenor, played by Nawaki. He has got some Pharazim Swordmasters, probably the mightiest unit of infantry in the game at this point, with 3 hit points and a huge amount of infantry killing power with those swords. Numenorian Shield Guard, again AP spears. Royal Legion of Armanlos, which are a very fine unit of line infantry in and of themselves. Cohort and Shield Guard over here as well. Seafarers of Nindamos, Numenorian Steel Bows. And there's a few Balagai units to bulk things out as well. Balagai Pikes, which are a good choice because it gives you that phalanx that you may very well need in the late game, and some more Seafarers and some Balagai archers as well. So that is the attackers. Now let's move on to the defenders. And starting off with Gothmog, who is playing as Angmar, so heading up this defence today with some upgraded Guardians of CARN DUM, really going to be good for holding the line. I'm going to be careful of that armour piercing though. Some Witch Realm Inquisitors over here, so the Witch King himself, here he is, shortly after singing Let It Go. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they get used. I mean, they can definitely outperform the Riddermark skirmishers when it comes to melee, but they're up here on the second layer, so I do wonder if they are going to be utilised in that way. I think this is the Mordor army actually, which is commanded by Joran. So he has got some Barrow-wights from Gothmog on the front, backed up by all of Mordor's army, so Orc Javelins. There's some Minas Morgul Chosen in there, very nice heavy spearmen. There is more javelins, I believe. There's also Morannon Halberds, Sauron's Will, so a ton of AP over here, which is going to be useful actually against the high quality of Numenor. We've got some Morannon Guard in there. There is also some more Morannon Guard. The Nazgul are here, which is nice. Uruk Captains, again, yet more AP. Temple Executioners, Olag High, Ardonayim Shield Bows, Minas Morgul's Chosen, and Temple Guard. Not too surprising to see Mordor go quality heavy when they're on the defence like this. Much more understandable, I think. Blackwatch Legion from Angmar. We've also got some Angmar halberds, obviously very basic, but they'll get the job done, potentially anyway. Blackwatch Legion, Snaga Stalkers moving up here to the bulk of the Angmar force as well. We've got some upgraded Witcher Realm Pikemen. The Mighty Witchers, we'll see how they get used today. Trolls of Angmar, Trolls of Gundabad, so going for the double trolls that Angmar often do. Witcher Realm Blackguard. And we've got a couple of Scourge Raiders which do have the armour upgrade. The armour upgrade for them is not quite as obvious as it is with the others. With the others, jet black armour is enough to signify that Angmar has risen again. On this occasion though, the Witcher Realm Scourge Raiders have got jet black coloration no matter what. It's the helmets you need to look out for. Even so though, even with the armour upgrade, they're still the sort of unit you want to shoot down from afar with arrows. Guardians of CARN DUM are here as well. There is a singular unit of Barrow-wights in the town centre. Unit of Orc Fellas, which has revealed itself already. And finally, the Candish army. So let's see here. Actually, no, that's a unit of Orc Fellas. So more Orc Fellas are over here. Armour piercing, which, to be fair, definitely the right side of the battle to be on with Gondor and Khazad-Dum. We have Morris playing as Khand. He's got some nomadic marauders, so some nice javelins. Brotherhood of the Shadows, a nice unit of assassins. Nurad Stormguard, Brotherhood of the Axe and Sword. We've got some Nurad halberds, Nurad footmen. Nomadic infantry, so a lot of AP infantry for Khand, which again is good because they're on the right side to deal with that sort of thing. And the nomadic infantry will be good at skirmishing should the need arise. A second unit of Brotherhood of the Axe. So I like the way he's built his army. He's got a single unit of Brotherhood of the Spear. I prefer to have seen more Brotherhood of the Spear than Sword, to be honest with you. These guys are kind of underwhelming for what they are, but they still have a use at least. Some more Scourge Raiders. Some more Stormguard actually, so he's gone for... actually no, there's just the one unit of Stormguard, isn't it? And of course, the mighty Variag Cataphracts, who are about to make their way outside the settlement actually. So without further ado, let's begin. We won't need to wait long for things to get underway either. So the Variag Cataphracts are going to come out. They also have the Witcher Realm Inquisitors, of course, but this is exactly the sort of thing the Riddermark skirmishers would have been brought for. Having said that, again, with a unit of knights like this, you really have to get your micro down if you're going to javelin them to death. And they could be really devastating as well. We'll see. Gondor have got plenty of options with which to try and deal with them. They've got plenty of regular spears, they've got Fountain Guard, they have got, there goes the catapult as well, firing into, already killing off a portion of that nomadic infantry. They need to get out of here quickly though, these Variag Cataphracts, because the Fountain Guard are on the way forward. Yeah, another one of the good units you can use. I do like the axes on the Variag Cataphracts. I like their style in general actually. I like the Samurai-esque helms, but I like the fact they still pack on that lamellar armour, giving them that nomad of the east feeling. They need to get that nomadic infantry off, but Khand have got a lot of microing to do, so they may lose most of that unit of archers, to be honest with you. He's heading over here. To be honest with you, charging into the Ents is a risky proposition, but it's one that I would probably take, because if you charge into them lances down, you are going to kill several of them, I think, and I think that is what he is doing. It is what he is doing. And he does kill off 2 of the Ents, I believe. He does need to get them out of there quickly though, because the Ents will really start to do heavy damage to the Variags. But that's worth it, I think, because the Ents can be a real pain for you later on. And weakening them up like that is a good move, I think. And he's actually got 2 units of Riddermark skirmishers, Rohan. There goes the wall that Gondor has been crumbling down. You can see some dead nomads there on the floor. They need to keep moving quickly though. I mean, the Variag Cataphracts, the one downside they do have in comparison to a few other knights is they're not the quickest. Stuff like the Sindar of the Girdle, the Horse Lords of Ulmo would easily be outrunning the Riddermark skirmishers, but on this occasion, of course, because of their really heavy armour, they're having a bit of a hard time getting away from the Riddermark skirmishers, to be honest with you. So it'll be interesting to see how Morris continues to use his Cataphracts. He got a decent charge, but he needs to get more value off of them, really, before they inevitably perish out here in the snowy wastes. Oh, and he is going to charge into them, so Mevin wasn't prepared for that, so he's going to get into melee with them here, and to be fair, while the Riddermark skirmishers are melee cavalry, a single unit of them is not going to be enough to bring down Variags. They will pull away as well, so a good charge. They kill off a few more of the Cataphracts, but it's better than doing nothing, and he did catch them out there, I think. But the axe-wielding Rohirrim are going to set off in hot pursuit. 3 more of the Cataphracts fell there. Yeah, it's going to be interesting here to see how this works. I mean, you can see spears are also coming out. I do think the attackers so far have done a pretty good job, I have to say, of sort of mitigating this 1 unit of cavalry. This is the problem. If you sally out with only 1 unit of cavalry, it's easy to focus on only it. I think it would have been more beneficial if the Angmar player also sent his cavalry out here reasonably quickly. But you can see here now the Cataphracts slowly moving uphill. The Rohirrim nipping at their heels here. they going to go after? Can they go after Eastmarks? Westmark Marshals there, you can see, yeah, they're getting picked off at this point. They need to just pick a target and charge into it, I think, and just hope that they can get some good kills. The Westmark Marshals might not be the worst target, they'll rip them apart in melee, what's left of the Beriags, but yeah, in the end they weren't able to do that, and now they're going to get mobbed, and they will be brought down. They may kill off a couple more Riddermark skirmishes. Overall, though, I would suggest that, yeah, they're broken and fighting to death. Overall, I would suggest that wasn't a worthwhile unit. I like the fact he went after the Ents. They gave a good deal back in return, but it's worth sort of worrying the enemy like that. But in the end, with only a single unit of cavalry, it was a simple task really for the attackers to zone it out, and a good pick in the end from the Rohirrim, because if those skirmishers weren't there, those cataracts could have been much more painful than they ended up being. Meanwhile, there's some of the Eastmark, oh, that's actually Riddermark spears that are dead on the floor there. No, see, interestingly enough, that's something you don't often see. So the Riddermark spears effectively got locked into melee, dropped the ram, retreated, and now Mordor have stolen the ram. They've stolen the ram and they're going to push it inside the walls so that Rohan can't use it. I mean, there's plenty more rams on the field today, but still. That is definitely a viable tactic. Meanwhile, CARN have come outside the walls here, and again, they're going for the same sort of thing. So the ram has been sent up without any sort of support. Oof. A really nice shot there from the catapult. A red mist rises as the Nurads take the brunt of that, but with the arrow towers, it's one of those custom settlements that does actually have arrow towers that can be used to the defender's advantage. The Nurads came forward. The armour piercing and just the fact they're going up against spears means they'll easily be able to outperform Gondor spearmen. I say easily. They will outperform Gondor spearmen. The arrow towers will continue to do some damage, but now they're going to fall back into a shaped can and get ready to receive the enemy. Saw the burning siege tower just a moment ago, and it has now crumbled, and its carcass now lies in the middle of the map. No such resistance over here in the middle gate for the Gondor spearmen, perhaps because there are other units nearby. It is only Eastmark spears, to be fair, but still. As those arrow towers continue to fire, they're not overly devastating, but still, they will just pick off the odd soldier here and there, which, it will add up over time. Gondor spearmen banging away on that gate. Only Snaga that they can see on the other side, but plenty more of the Angmar ready to defend as well. A little bit slower over here, perhaps as I kind of expected. It's down to Rohan to do the dirty work of pushing the ram in once more to try and knock down the gates, because Mirkwood and Numenor are going to be a little bit more precious about it, because they perceive themselves to be the elites. They won't be doing the dirty work, they want to be the heroes in the late game, as is often the way. We shall see if that does prove to be the case. Gondor battering through the central gatehouse. Over here, meanwhile, once again, CARN coming outside the walls to a certain extent, and yeah, Gondor spearmen not going to enjoy being in melee with Nurad footmen. Nurad footmen, decent armour, but the main defence they have against ranged attacks is, of course, those big square wicker shields, or rectangle wicker shields, I should say. And immediately, though, Morris is going to notice that this is going to be a bit of a problem. I mean, this is risky from Vivorax, because he's sending forward his Athelian range. He's going to shoot point blank. He will do a lot of damage there. That's going to, yeah, you see how the numbers tumble. This is why Rangers won't be remaining in the game as they are for too much longer. But they could get caught in melee here, and they're also getting shot down. I mean, if I were CARN, I'd happily trade a couple of units of Nurad footmen to make sure Gondor could not use Athelian Rangers in the late game. But the Rangers will scurry away, not without taking losses though. So their DPS will be somewhat compromised in the later game. As the Nurads continue to fight forwards with their spiked clubs. Doing a good job. There's some Gondor infantry on the front line as well, but Gondor are just, their regular units in particular, are not well positioned to fight the Nurads. The Nurads have just got a natural advantage over the Gondorians in that sense because of their reliance on their plate armour. So I actually quite like the fact that CARN is taking the front foot, because it's forcing Gondor maybe to think again about this. I didn't actually notice a huge amount of archers from Gondor other than the Athelian Rangers, so any range support is going to have to come from Khazad-Dum. And also melee support from Khazad-Dum. Like, again, the AP will be useful against Khazad-Dum, but their quality, even with their basic units, is of a level that CARN may very well struggle anyway. Nomadic infantry have got a really nice shot there into the back of those Gondorians. They're winning that fight anyway, but the shot is so good that you can't really afford to pass it up. It'll be a really efficient engagement. So very nice there from Morris. I like it. Again, coming forward, they're going to go into the Eastmark spearmen here as they try to poke in, try to throw some javelins, which they have managed, to be fair. They've fired a few volleys into the Angmar halberdiers, but Eastmark's spears are getting engaged now by some Snaga. They're still continuing to fire though, so at this point Gothmog has a decision to make. How best does he go about dealing with this situation? The Snaga will of course crumble sooner rather than later, especially in the face of any kind of quality, and that is what upgraded Gondor spearmen will provide in comparison to the lowly Snaga. Still a rather slower pace of life over here. They do manage to break through the gates just as we arrive, those Riddermark spears. So now we shall see. I think Numenor are going to be the ones leading the way, which I do agree with, to be fair. They are more heavily armoured, so when it comes down to taking a bit of punishment early, although to be fair, where javelins are concerned, the armour doesn't really come into it as much. You can see now the Angmar halberdiers are pushing in, now that it looked like Gondor was going to break through. The AP will be useful, but I think more is going to be required, honestly. They have enough over here that they can reinforce quickly if needed. A couple of units of Blackwatch Legion will provide the mass, certainly. Meanwhile, 3rd Legion Infantry pushing forward, as are more warriors of Khazad-Dum. And you can see now at this point the Nurads. I think it's a bit of a mistake here for Morris to send forward a unit of Nurad halberds. I mean, if he's going to do that, he shouldn't be trying to retreat units. And a big problem he's having is, of course, across the way, Athelian Rangers shooting into the side, as are the Orc Hunters of Khazad-Dum, so that's going to be really, really devastating. So he's going to need to pull back. He's going to take losses doing so, but it's better than the alternative of just standing here to be shot. And you can see here, warriors of Khazad-Dum moving inwards. Siege Tower also over here, which is pretty interesting. They're going to try and get up onto the walls to try and silence those nomadic infantrymen who are continuing to fire into those Gondorians down there. Slow going, shooting the Gondorians to death, but it is still possible. A couple more units of AP infantry here, going after the warriors, who are a little bit stretched out, so the Nurads will very much take that fight, and the warriors still will suffer at the hands of the Nurad AP, I have to say. Meanwhile, over here on this gatehouse, Inquisitors, I'm not sure what they were thinking of doing, but whatever it was, they shouldn't go in here, because there's both Spearmen and Heavy Axemen. And with the Westmark Marshals on hand, yeah, the Snaga and the Angmar Halberds are going to get absolutely destroyed. And a choice has to be made now, because a lot of Angmar's reinforcements they've got over here actually are not going to be efficient against the Westmark Marshals. The Trolls will fall in droves to the Westmarks, and it looks like that's what Gothmog is going to commit to the situation. That is a risky play. Like, I would back the Westmark Marshals in this situation, especially if more reinforcements are forthcoming. Those Trolls will not get the amount of kills that I think Gothmog is hoping they will, but to be fair, the Blackwatch Legion would also get absolutely destroyed by Westmarks. The Trolls are enough to turn the tide of the balance of power for now, and actually they are shaking, the Westmark Marshals, so perhaps they can be broken by the Trolls. Perhaps reinforcements are required, we shall see. Meanwhile, looks like they are going to try and seize the walls over here at least. Here Pang are firing, but they're firing over the walls. They're trying to fire through the gatehouse, I think. If you're going to do that, though, you need to get a little bit closer. And even if you're doing that, Moran on guard, are they really the most worthwhile target? Are they trying to go after the Barrow-wights, perhaps? The hit points are too great. That's where perhaps being a little bit more on the back foot for Joey Wan Kenobi. You know, Mirkwood does engender that kind of playstyle, I know, because of how good their skirmishes are, but you need to be a little bit more... Numenor and Mirkwood need to seize the day a little bit. They need to be in there. They need to get up into Mordor's faces and use their quality to their advantage. The longer they dither, essentially, the more that the arrow towers are going to do, the more comfortable Mordor are going to be. Temple Guard are going to fire. I mean, they're using armor-piercing arrows again. They're banking their shots over the wall, really. But a lot of them are hitting. Maybe not the best target from Mordor's perspective either, and wasting your ammo as the defenders can be a real killer. Angmar, I think, did actually manage to break off those units. Well, they didn't break them, but they did force them backwards at least, and the Javelins are going to do the rest. So Rohan could have been onto a winner there, but in the end they weren't quite able to make that stick. Meanwhile, Brotherhood of the Spear are moving forward to help block the Dwarven and Gondorian advance. Over here, meanwhile, they pushed a siege tower in, presumably to try and get a Khandish defensive position out of the way. So we have a siege tower inside the walls now, in addition to having rams inside the walls. But once again, Khand here to block. And again, just so much AP in the way. Nurad halberds, the Brotherhood of the Axe are on the front line now as well, which is going to be a real problem. Like, Gondor infantry aren't going to stand a chance against any of these units, really, as those halberd blows continue to rain down from on high. The gate closes once more. Ooh, and Witcher fire over here as well. What was that all about? That wasn't really the best. I mean, there is a blob there, but none of it is particularly high quality. Witchers, I would say, you're probably best off waiting until later. I mean, you could demolish that little force there, but we'll see. I mean, time and time again, we've seen the Witchers be completely useless. So, I mean, as long as they shoot into blobs, either way, it should be fine. Nurad Stormguard moving across. They're going to push in a siege tower over here as well. So, I mean, this will disrupt the phalanx here of the Witcher armed pikemen. But they're going to send across some Nurad Stormguard as well, so more AP. Khand really piling it on here. They were very fortunate, well, they obviously knew, based on deployment, that Gondor and Khazad-Dum were over here. With all their AP, Khand were definitely the right choice to send up against them. Still only basic units so far. Well, I guess the 3rd Legion are an upper tier line infantry unit, but pikes are in the way, more armour piercing, more Brotherhood of the Axe. Gives them a little bit of cover from ranged units in behind, I suppose, but that isn't really their main concern at this point. The Athelian Rangers trying to fire at something. Javelins coming in as well from the nomadic marauders. There goes another wall. On to victory, eh? How about that? It's been nomadic infantry shooting into the Athelian Rangers. Been punishing for Khazad-Dum and Gondor so far. I just wonder if Khand have got the staying power to keep that assault going. The Trolls, this is where they've bitten off more than they can chew. This is where they've gone too far. The Westmark Marshals, they've got more units around them. This is where those AP axes will really start to come into their own. Meanwhile, where is that breach? There it is. They're going to do the same thing here as well. They're going to push their siege towers in. I mean, the only way I can see this being useful is if there's a defence set up in the way, which over here there isn't. Also getting in the way of ranged units, however, which on the other side there isn't, but over here there actually is. To be fair, there is on the other side as well. So I mean, it's an interesting idea. I don't think it will make a huge difference if the defenders just position themselves correctly, but it makes life a little bit more awkward for them. And it is something which makes use of this huge amount of siege towers that they have. They could probably make their own CARN DUM replica, to be honest with you, with the amount of wood they've brought, but still, Numenor are now inside the walls. Numenor and Shield Guard going to engage with the Barrow-wights. I imagine the Morannon units are going to close in as well. The Halberdiers with those javelins are going to be useful. And some Numenorian cohort just in behind, not coming through the gates just yet, but the arrow towers continue to just plug away at this manpower. And so far, the only out-and-out assault has been from Gondor and Khazad-Dum, who once again are going to be using this to their advantage. The Trolls finally fall, or one Troll of Gundabad remains, in and amongst all of the Dwarves and Gondorians. Nurad Stormguard, balance of forces evenly matched. I guess that does go to show the Dwarven quality on this line, but the AP I think should still be enough to see them over the line. And it has been a punishing encounter, but for both sides you can see the amount of dead Nurads on the floor appears to override the amount of dead Gondorians, but I think that is a bit of a red herring. I think, to be honest, it's both sides that have been really killing one another in high quantities, which suits the attackers more, of course. Khand are still here. They've got some Brotherhood of the Shadows. Once again, the 3rd Legion. I mean, this is the downside to doing this. They pushed in infantry units far too far into the defences, and as a result, a unit of 40, as it was then, perfectly good 3rd Legion, have ended up breaking. Look at this. They're inside the siege tower. Remarkable. Orc fellas being committed forward, so more AP. Low quality AP, but still. It'll still be very efficient against the basic Gondorians. Gondor infantry still being given the business really by the Brotherhood of the Axe. And over here, pikemen, they've managed to establish themselves once again. So it was an interesting idea to try and disrupt the formations, but at the very least they're still getting in the way of the ranged projectiles. They're finally coming in through the gate, which was a bit of a weak point in the defence, as 4th Legion Shield Guard will destroy nomadic marauders with relative ease when it comes to a melee fight. What have we got over here? Still not a huge amount of an attack going on over here. Riddermark archers shooting point blank into the Angmar halberds, but perhaps Gothmog just wants to keep them here so that the arrow towers can continue to fire in, continue to do just those small amounts of incremental damage. Meanwhile, over here, again, a bit of a mess with regards to siege towers once again. Barrow White's in the way, Moran on guard, kind of pointing the wrong way actually, but with only a single unit of Numenorian shield guard here, the attackers need to send forward more. Again, as anyone who, it is something that I've noticed over my time, anyone who plays what is perceived to be a more elite faction, Mirkwood and Numenor certainly fall into that category. They tend to be far too standoffish. Like, you need to get in there. Like, you're not going to achieve anything with one unit at a time, no matter how elite they are. And that may come back to haunt them, to be honest with you. Like, they should be taking a leaf out of Gondor and Mirkwood's book. Yes, it will be painful, but this is just going to be painful over a longer period of time. Even more painful over a longer period of time, I would say. Yeah, and the Shield Guard are struggling. The Sauron's Will are a good unit to send against them, especially with Javelin support, because that AP is going to crack through the Numenorian plate. Very, very nice. Back here we've got some Minas Morgul Chosen, Olag Higher there. Over here, again, they're just... Rohan, to be fair, they're largely on their own over here, Rohan, at this point. So they won't want to just charge right on into the welcoming arms of Angmar, but the longer they stay out there, the more damage they're going to take with their arrows. So I do think it is actually on Gondor and Khazad-Dum at this stage to actually make something happen. The Witchers clearly attacked over here, but they killed off some of the dwarves, I think, but not a huge amount, so maybe not the best use of their ammunition. Archers coming in from behind, nomadic infantry doing their thing still, and the dwarves having their progress blocked by a unit of Orc Fellas. Once again, the AP will be useful, but the quality of the 4th Legion is such that the Orc Fellas won't win this fight by any means. They'll just take a few more losses in return. Now we're starting to see as well Athelian Rangers continuing to do their thing, but continuing to get shot by the nomadic infantry. I'm surprised they're still here, actually. I mean, there's many Rangers have fallen already. Pelagia Marines are here. Still got more to give Khazad-Dum and Gondor. And of course, as the battle wears on, especially from from both perspectives actually, we're going to see stuff like the Fountain Guard, Citadel Guard, Khazad-Dum sending forward the Hammers of Gundabad, a serious unit of shock infantry. So while things have gone well for CARN at the moment, they haven't had to fight the real cream of the crop yet, and as soon as they come forward, I would worry for them, honestly. There is yet more standard infantry coming in as well. Sentries of Khazad-Dum, so a nice phalanx to answer the Witchround pikemen, and they're actually starting to lose ground now, our Angmar and CARN. Still a few Brotherhood of the Axe. Nomadic infantry firing away. Interesting to see what the Brotherhood of the Shadows do with their throwing knives. So far, I mean, it is, you know, some of those arrows are thudding into the siege towers, but oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. An absolutely terrible use of the Witchers there from Gothmog. Dreadful communication between the defenders, and not only is that a waste of a Witcher volley, he grilled some of his own men doing it. Again, it's been highly questionable use of the Witchers in general so far, and they could get engaged in melee here if Vivarax is paying attention. This Gondor infantry should be able to jump on them. Unfortunately he isn't, but still. In come the Orc Fellas again. Going to try and close the door on those Gondorians as they get in behind the Witchround pikemen. It's enough to break some units in there. Nomadic infantry are here. Trolls are moving in with the Orc Fellas. That will be enough to do a lot of damage to the Gondorians that just came in through the gate, to be honest. But yeah, not fantastic use of the Witchers so far, but everything else the defenders have done over here has actually been pretty decent. Angmar halberds getting engaged by some Eastmark spears, who immediately get shunted into by some Blackwatch Legion. Meanwhile, what is happening here? Barrow White's still standing tall. Wooden Realm Axemen coming in, some Belagire archers shooting in through the gap. What are they going after? Temple Guard? It'll take a while to get through the Temple Guard armour and HP, but It's a better target than most, I suppose, but yeah, you can see these Numenorian cohort engaging with the Sauron's will. A bloody fight indeed. Here Peng trying to skirmish in, so they're trying to use their archers to good effect here, the attackers, but it comes at the cost of any sort of expedient melee assault. Javelins coming in here, orc javelins of course, cheap, easy to get cost efficiency with, going into the shield guard, getting a few hits on the Woodland Realm Axeman as well. And this defence will stand firm. The Barrow Wights will do the job for now, and if need be, the Minas Morgul's Chosen can also push in with that heavy armour and that formation. So yeah, all quite comfortable for Mordor so far. As soon as like the main assault begins, which it will at some point, that's when they probably have to be a little bit more concerned, but we shall see. What have we got here? Rohan's still imming and ahhing as well, wondering whether or not to come in here. To be fair, I think for Rohan it's a little bit more understandable because they are a more fragile faction overall, and they're on their own here in the Middle Gate, and Angmar is just waiting for the excuse to come down on them like a ton of bricks, which didn't take long. Eastmark Spearmen coming in, Blackwatch Legion will easily finish them off. Riddermark Spearmen are in there as well. None of these units are going to be particularly good at dealing with the Blackwatchers, but yeah. So Rohan are actually doing the right thing, I think, by waiting. I think Numenor and Mirkwood need to be a bit more aggressive, but once again, CARN and Angmar, with a bit of support, have managed to keep defending over here. They're still holding the outermost reaches of the settlement. Brotherhood of the Sword are being committed now, which, to be fair, will be enough to defeat the basic Gondorian units. But we're starting to see evidence now of some not-so-basic Gondorian units. Fountain Guard. Sons of the Fallen coming forward from Khazad-Dum. Whatever happened to those Hammer Guard? Or Hammers of Gundabad? Well, here they are. They've gotten into the Brotherhood of the Shadow, which, I mean, to be fair, that will be a fairly bruising encounter, but some reinforcements are required. There's another unit of Brotherhood of the Shadows here. They may need to prevent the dwarves from getting onto the walls, to be honest with you, because you can see they want to get up there. They want to get some range support down into this position. Are those nomadic infantry stuck because of the siege tower, I wonder? That would be quite interesting. With two Brotherhood of the Shadows, those Hammers of Gundabad should be brought low. Orc fellas continuing to push in. What have we over here? Some more Storm Guard being sent forward. Oof. The Witchers finally getting some good value off. It was only a matter of time, and the Gondorians rout. This isn't the first time we've seen this in recent weeks, with the Witchers getting a nice volley into the centre of the Gondor line and then routing. Most of them should come back, to be fair. The regular spears probably won't, but the Citadel Guard should. Meanwhile, over here, guards of Khazad-Dum and 2nd Legion coming forward, but the Nurad Storm Guard are in the way. CARN's lines have been tough to break down, you have to say. Those shadows are going to follow the Orc Hunters up onto the walls as well, which does mean that these Hammers of Gundabad will defeat this other unit of shadows. Fountain Guardsmen coming down, Sons of the Fallen, yeah, Orc fellas and Brotherhood of the Sword are not going to be enough against this calibre of opposition. More fellas are going to come in to try and just slow their progress. There goes the Candish General, who has been fighting very, very hard so far. The Witchers getting down off the walls. Some Shield Guard that have routed. Actually, are they pushing outside the walls? They are. I think this is a bit of a mistake from Angmar. Maybe they lost patience a little bit, but this is exactly the sort of thing that Rohan wanted, because now a unit has come outside the walls that they can jump on with overwhelming force. There's a few axemen in there, mostly spears and swordsmen, but they're easily going to be able to overwhelm the Great Shield Infantry here. Hopefully Angmar doesn't continue to go outside, because at this point it's a lost cause. I really hope he doesn't anyway. Meanwhile, over here on this side of things, they're still not making a huge amount of progress. There's some Seafarers of Nin Damos that have come in. There are gaps that have appeared. Numenorian cohorts. So Seafarers are in here, but you know, with the damage they have done, presumably with their javelins, that's the excuse the Minas Morgul Chosen needed to push inwards. And not a lot of progress being had over here still. The Seafarers are actually a unit I would have saved till later as well, because their javelins can be so much more effective than the shiny units of heavy infantry they've got back here, which would be more useful right from the off here. These units aren't going away, that's the thing. Like, you're saving your units, but for what? Numenorian cohort defeat seems certain. Only a military genius could win this battle. And in come the Olag Kai. I mean, the Olag Kai might not be the worst thing to send against the cohort. That looks like, yeah, Ardenayam shadow bows. The Athelian Rangers were used to good effect over on the other side of the field. Mordor using their Rangers to good effect over on this. Oof, and there goes Balin, killed by the Witcher banner carrier, actually. It's not often you see the Witchers be useful in melee, but there they are. They must have used their ammunition now. Witcher Inquisitors going outside the walls. The Witchers are in melee. They will ultimately lose to the Guards of Khazad-Dum because that's just the way of things, but though you can see Riddermark skirmishers, javelins and arrows coming in, the Witcher Inquisitors thought about charging outwards but were immediately turned back. Probably the worst area they could charge out into, to be honest with you, with javelin, cavalry and fountain guard waiting for them. Nomadic infantry going to be engaged by the Citadel Guard, which did return from routing in the end. So it was just a reprieve, really, the Witcher volley gave to these beleaguered forces of CARN, who have done a really good job, but ultimately Gondor and Khazad-Dum, their victory is somewhat inevitable over on this side of the field at this stage, I would think. The quality they have is just going to be too much. CARN have expended too much of their force. Riddermark skirmishers riding into the lower reaches. Inquisitors getting shot up by the javelins as well. Nomadic infantry are leaving. Those Inquisitors need to be real careful. Citadel Guard are the ultimate cavalry killers, really. They're going to charge in here, the Inquisitors, as the skirmishers try to get away. They will take losses in so doing. Good kills. But there are 2 units of Riddermark skirmishers, so if Rohan plays their cards right here, the Riddermark skirmishers could be really efficient in this battle by being a big part in defusing both units of enemy cavalry. The Witch King trying to take the front foot in defending his fortress. Fountain Guard are also moving forward, so yeah, CARN are pretty much spent at this point. They fought really hard on this front line, but ultimately you have to say it was in vain. Gondor and Khazad-Dum still have good units available to them. They are depleted, of course they are, but they can afford to be quite happy with that. And now the question is, again, like, now Rohan are pushing in, they see that the time is right. Westmark infantry coming forward. They will lose this fight initially, of course, but the main problem is they're going to get reinforcements coming from over here at this stage, and Angmar, I don't know if they're going to be able to defend all of those areas. Nomadic infantry turning around, so they do have some presence still on the field, and they see an opportunity to get a little bit more damage done to Rohan before they retreat. Sauron's will pulling back as well, so this is probably going to be the beginning of a mass retreat, to be honest with you, which is perhaps a bit of a saving grace for the forces of Numenor and Mirkwood, who at this point, when they see this happening, they should absolutely be all over that. They should be ready to move in. But once again, dragging their heels a little bit, perhaps. Yeah, Hiri Lang at the back. I mean, they have got their fragile units at the back at least. Hiri Alth are moving forward in numbers. They are moving forward. Their reinforcements were just too far away. Which, to be fair, they wanted to avoid the damage from the arrow tower, so it's understandable, but they're not going to be able to take advantage of a retreating Mordor, which, of course, in a siege, doing a lot of damage as the enemy tries to retreat from one position to another is one of the ways that you can really equalise the numbers a little bit. But with Barrow-wights in the rear guard, who are a really good rear guard because they don't break and they're just so tough to wear down. Olag Kai as well, who are going to try and do a bit of damage to the Hiri Ek before leaving themselves. Let's see here. Hiri Pang firing into those orc javelins as they go. Their own siege tower technique, however, they're getting in the way somewhat. Yeah, and Citadel Guard coming over to help the Rohirrim. So Gondor and Rohan, natural allies, assisting one another here in the central gatehouse. Guardians of CARN DUM getting ripped apart. Some dwarves over here as well. So yeah, it was hard fought certainly, but Gondor and Khazad-Dum very much securing this part of the lower fortress. Interestingly enough, there are still some Brotherhood of the Shadows who did, I think, manage to kill off that entire unit of Orc Hunters. They're being tidied up now, though, by some quality Dwarven infantry. Can't ask for more than that.
Only half the enemy force remains.
Riddermark skirmishers. Moving around. Guardians of CARN DUM. They may be overextending themselves a little bit here, Gondor. I mean, the Fountain Guard are really strong, but I mean, if they play their cards right here, Angmar, they could finish this unit of Fountain Guard, but I don't think they're going to. I think they're scurrying away. I think they're panicking a little bit. Hitting the panic button. We're going back to the final stand right away. Most of Mordor's army is here in this final stand, to be honest. And that does come about as a result of, again, not a lot of damage being done by Mirkwood and Numenor. I feel like I've dunked on them in this fight, really, when I haven't really meant to. It's just an observation. Like, if you do make the choice to be a little bit more slow-paced, a little bit more conservative, like, this is what can happen. Like, you end up not doing a lot of damage to the enemy early on. And so as a result, nothing really happens. Like, both sides still have a lot of strength left in the late game, so in a way it's better for the defenders as well, because they have like a more consolidated position. So in the end, you're probably slightly working against yourselves, really. I mean, the Olag High have at least been caught. The heavy elven spears should be enough to bring this big boy down. He's doing some damage though. The Barrow-wights will, of course, be killed by the huge amount of Numenorians and elves that they are now facing off against. And what have we here? Pharazim Swordmasters moving around, the Rohirrim pushing their siege weaponry up here as Mordor try to get their entire army into the final keep. Meanwhile, Minas Morgul Chosen coming out here, which should be enough to bring about the end of these Riddermark skirmishes. And it is. They rout, and they should be able to help finish off this very depleted unit of Fountain Guard as well, so in the end they will get what they want out of this. Fountain Guard may be able to kill off maybe an Olag High or two before they fall, but no, they won't. They'll rout. They've got really high morale, the Fountain Guard, but not so high that they can withstand that kind of thing. So, what will the attackers do? How will they handle this? Ooh, Guardians of CARN DUM. They're going to be left behind. So as much as that unit of Fountain Guard was jumped on, now Helm's Hammers are here, and they probably don't want to go out to save the Guardians of CARN DUM for a second time, the defenders, because there's too much in the way of support there now. Citadel Guard, Helm's Hammers, a huge amount really of support, and that's going to be 50 very useful unit men of heavy infantry, or orcs of heavy infantry. And they're ultimately going to be thrown under the bus. What have we got here? Nazgul. They are coming out? That's surprising. I'd recommend against this for the defenders. Just cut your losses. Like, you've fallen back here for a reason. Don't throw it all away. There's still Barrow-wights down here? Oh no, the Nazgul are over here. They're sort of just trying to be all sneaky-like. It's not going to work though, because they have been noticed, and the Seafarers are going to throw some javelins at them. Not a huge amount, they don't seem to care at all though. Standing firm in the face of those javelins. But it's something to keep their eye on, I suppose. But Numenor and Mirkwood certainly have the manpower. That isn't going to bother them too much, I would imagine. Actually, we're going to go up to ×2 speed here. Interestingly, the gate has, this is the thing, like, they came forward, there's a second unit of Nazgul actually from Joran, so he decided to go for the extra to bring 2. And they will kill off these Westmark spearmen, but they could overwhelm them here, that's the thing. So, pretty sloppy. Down comes some support, Witchram Scourge Raiders who are still reasonably healthy, throwing those throwing axes in. Forward come the Olag High, waddling forward as they do. And the Rohirrim are going to go backwards now. I mean, the Westmark Marshals are being committed forward. Really, I'm ×2ing it because the main assault can't really begin until Mirkwood and Numenor start pulling their weight. There goes that gatehouse. Instead of using a ram, they just used their catapult ammunition on it. Fair enough. What are they going to do now? Orc hunters firing over the wall. They can scarcely miss, to be fair. There's so many orcs in here that the arrows are probably going to hit something. Whether that will be useful or not remains to be seen. Still, Numenor and Mirkwood continue to be doing things under their own pace, shall we say. What is this out here? Oh, come on. Like, there's being slow and then there's this. Like, what are you doing, my dude? The battle's going to be over by the time these guys get here, potentially. Ents and Elven King's Palace Guard, yeah, not a fan of this. Like, get them forward. What are you saving them for? The whole point of a unit is so that it can be used. Not just stand there looking pretty at the back. Meanwhile, Scourge Raiders getting shot, potentially. Hard to tell what is being shot. I mean, Scourge Raiders is one of the better targets to go after, because like I said, armour upgrade or no, they are not going to be very resilient to arrows. Dwarven arrows as well are pretty good. Mordor still has some ammo. They expended some of it earlier on, but there goes the other gate. So, how will the attackers approach this? So far it's been this side of the map where they've been far more willing to move forward. Riddermark archers moving backwards. Citadel Guard, will they take point? If you were the attackers, you might feel a little bit aggrieved because the defenders have fallen back to the final stand with quite a lot still. But having said that, I think they brought it upon themselves. The reason why Mordor still have so much is because Numenor and Mirkwood were very slow in their assault. So if they'd have been a little bit quicker, perhaps this wouldn't be the case. Scourge Raiders are here, as are a unit of Barrow Wights, of course, from Gothmog. So what are they going to do? They do have that artillery, interestingly enough. Try and push it over here again. There's not really an easy shot for the catapult here. They either have to bank the shot over the wall and risk wasting the ammunition entirely, or they put it directly into harm's way. And that would be potentially a massive waste. I mean, of course, the good thing here is that Numenor and Mirkwood still have a lot, but even still over here, they're allowing their allies to do the dirty work. Again, something about the way that they've approached this just really rubs me up the wrong way for some reason. I'm not quite sure why, because now is the time for them. Mirkwood are finally moving in, bloodying their blades, going after the Morannon Guard. They will need more than just a singular unit, as the Hiri Outh get into melee. Javelins from the Seafarers also. So we are going to see the beginnings of a melee engagement, and this is going to be a real grind fest here for the final defensive position. Shieldmanes of Rohan and the Seafarers of Nindamos. There's still arrow fire coming in from over the walls. Very limited amount of damage, but it is still at least putting pressure on. Rohan and Gondor taking point over here, the West Marks. Well, it's mostly Rohan actually, like very, very limited amounts of Gondorians are on this front line. Arrows raining down from on high. Orc hunters also doing their thing. But it is going to be slow going. That is going to be the name of the game. Nimlothian Honor Guard pushing forward onto the front line as well. Still healthy. Nice AP, very tough to wear down. Alongside the Hiri Outh with their armour upgrade as well. This is going to be very tough. I can see there are captains on the front line, which will certainly help matters. And the Ardenayam Shadowbows are also going to be a very important factor. As they scurry away, the Shieldmanes of Rohan. That phalanx from the Morannon Halberds would also be very, very handy actually as well, now that I come to think of it. Not the easiest position to shoot them. And Mirkwood, of course, don't really have a ready-made answer to it. I think there's still some Balagaya pikes from Numenor which could be handy. Indeed there is. Plenty of units still to be committed. And I would still place the attackers as the favourites in this situation. While they do have a nice defensive position here, the defenders, ultimately I think the attackers have got enough left that they're just not going to be able to withstand it, both in terms of numbers and quality. Guardians of CARN DUM here, javelins from the Pelagia Marines firing into the nomadic infantry. So CARN are still here, still helping their team. Barrow Wights being sent flying there. I like the colourful shields on the nomadic infantry. There goes the Gondorian general. In and amongst all of the halberdiers. The Ents are in there now. The Ents taking on the Olag High. Clash of the Titans. When both are at full strength, the Ents of course win. But it's an expensive army to be a part of, Mirkwood, when you bring the Ents along. Mordor can accommodate their trolls a little bit more easily. And it's a little bit more central to their playstyle as well, but yeah, they need more reinforcements on this front line at this point. Mordor's starting to struggle. Sauron's Will, a nice choice. The armour piercing will be useful against the Gondorians there, but also against the Ents. Some javelin volleys also forthcoming. More arrows being utilised as well. And that catapult is, you can tell it's trying to get into a nice position to fire over the wall. But that is most certainly easier said than done, but that's another tool that they have at their disposal here. The attackers, as the Westmarks, they are struggling a little bit. I mean, again, heavily armoured units in front of them, Barrow Wights as well, but overall it's just going to be a matter of time, I think, a matter of wearing the enemy down. Forward come the Citadel Guard. They're going to close in now with more reinforcements, seeing the elite Gondorians arrive. The Barrow Wights are going to fully commit, as are the Minas Morgul, chosen to add some depth to the armour on that front line. Having said that, we'll probably need a few more. Scourge Raiders are trying to throw their axes in here. And that damage will be very important, but they need to use it against the right units. And they're getting sliced up, really, by the Seafarers of Lindamos. Meanwhile, Mordor have stabilised on this front line, but they're still not winning outright. And in fact, you can see now, Balagire archers out of ammo. They're going to try and force their way through and cause some panic among the ranks of the defenders. Very nice indeed. Hiriek moving in. Balagar Pikeman, Hiri Lang, Hiri Auth. Yeah, they've still got a lot over here. With Hiriek on the front line, that'll give them a lot more staying power in this attack. They're not going to be able to force this attack to crumble anytime soon, put it that way. But it is going to be interesting because the defensive position is such that the attackers are still going to take losses. Forward come the Hammers of Gundabad. Depleted though they may be, the AP that they offer is still going to be very, very useful. As the Barrow Wights try to hold the line, more Morannon units are on the front line again. Morannon Guard, not really the level of quality that is going to be needed to win the fight, but it will at least make the passage for the attackers, I should say, that much more difficult. So the catapults here, they're going to do the risky play, like I said, but there's no ranged units to really stop them from doing this at this point. It's not as if they can push in to stop the catapult from firing. Only the lead catapult's going to be able to fire, I think. It'll be interesting to see what they actually hit. That's going to be... that is shooting to the moon. I wonder what they were actually targeting there. Is it going to come down? There it is. That is unfortunate. My. And they shot another one up into the air as well, but sniping the Mordor general out from that unit of Temple Guard. There's still that unit of Nazgul which is down on that wall over there, but it's not really doing anything. Again, another hit on those Temple Guardsmen. That was quite the shot indeed. Again, it doesn't really matter too much from a morale perspective. I mean, you might start to see Mordor break from the front line, which would be the end of days, really, for the defenders, but they will still have to kill all of these forces, because ultimately they'll just go back to the town centre, and the attackers will need to bring them down. But I think that may be a sign that the defenders are just running out of steam here, and ultimately the the slowness of Mirkwood and Numenor, and the ability, well, the allowance really of allowing Mordor to pull back with their full army kind of cancelled one another out in many ways, as was kind of expected. And the momentum that Khazad-Dum, Gondor and Rohan gave the attackers earlier on in the fight has been a little bit insurmountable for the defenders in many ways. Another good shot again. Bombarding from on high. A good shot into the Minas Morgul chosen. Turns out this is the best place to put your catapult. You just need to shoot your projectiles way up into the air. They're winning now on the front line, but I think that is very much a short-lived thing. Helm's hammers are here. Sons of the Fallen are pushing forward. They're being engaged now by the very snazzy-looking Temple Guard, but again, it's all a matter of time at this point, I think, before the defenders' efforts come to naught. Seafarers back there. What do they have in reserve still? Not all that much. I mean, not all that much from a melee expertise perspective. Most of these are skirmishes that are out of ammo. Like, Eastmark Spearmen are not really up to much in melee, nor are the Orc Hunters, to be brutally honest. The Shield Mains are slightly more useful because of their morale boosting, but even they're not the most damaging. The Guards of Khazad-Dum are fairly depleted, so to be fair, I mean, over on this side, most of what has been committed is the scary stuff. But it's over on this side that the problem really lies, because it was Numenor and Mirkwood that always had more to give here in the late game. Throwing Axes being committed, Minas Morgul chosen going to try and hold the line, but how long they're going to be able to do that is debatable, with the Royal Legion of Armenolos heading toward the front line as we speak. Olags, or one Olag, Olag singular. Hirialth is still here. You know, the mighty Palace Guard and Pharazim Swordmasters are now being committed. And with that, I mean, everything has been pretty much committed other than sort of inconsequential stuff and the Palace Guard at this stage. So, I mean, if the defenders can throw off this assault, then they would technically go on to win, but I think that's going to be too much of a hill for them to climb. Temple Executioners moving forward. Witchram Blackguard is still there. So they still have some elite units of their own, the defenders, but they just don't have the quantity of them that's going to be necessary for them to go on to win this fight. The Guards of Khazad-Dum are going to be coming forward. Armour-piercing blows raining down on them now. A lot of Temple units getting in there, though. So that's worth bearing in mind. As the 2nd Legion Axe Guard also come in, so a huge amount of AP on display, both for the defenders and the attackers today. Really giving it to one another. We saw CARN do that early on to the attackers, but now the tables have turned. Fountain Guard, Hammers of Gundabad, Guards of Khazad-Dum, Helms, Hammers. All of this stuff is going to be really, really useful against the armoured orcs that stand in front of them. Ents. Or Ent, singular, I should say. He's in and amongst the Rangers, making sure they can't fire, which would be one of the last great hopes. But he's only going to be able to delay them, as the Ardenheim Shadowbows do bring down the final Ent. Shield Mains of Rohan doing their thing. Oof, that was close. That catapult has been a real menace here. Those Rangers need to do their thing quickly, because those Shield Maidens are already targeting them down. Of course, the Ardenheim Shadowbows, I think, are the most heavily armoured unit of Rangers, so they can mitigate this damage better than most, but even they are going to fall in droves. It's really a shield value, I've noticed, that really stops the axe throwers from just destroying your unit. Armour helps, but that shield really is the thing. And without a shield, it's going to be a real problem for them. They've got a few volleys that they can do it firing, but now they just don't have the DPS. So it's going to be a victory. Seems certain for them. Are you sure? Well, I mean, fair play to the Minas Morgul chosen, with those Rangers fighting hard, fighting to the bitter end. Like I said, it is going to be a close finish. I just do not believe that the defenders have got what it takes to turn this fight around. Scourge Raiders getting in there. A player has admitted defeat, which is that canned, or is it Mordor? might be Mordor. Yeah, it is. It is Mordor. A little bit disappointing. He could have held on for a little bit longer, maybe kill off a couple more, but in the end I suppose it wouldn't have made too much of a difference. So there you go, Mordor admitting defeat after his general unceremoniously got sniped by the catapult shot to the moon. Which around Blackguard defeat almost a certainty. Such a strong unit. I really like the unit model for the Witcher and Blackguard. I like the Witch King-esque helms. They're used as the Castellans of Dol Guldur over in Divide and Conquer, which I find kind of weird. You'd think they'd be the unit model for the Witch Knights for Angmar. But, I don't know. Regardless, here we are. Yeah, there's a lot of units here, so ultimately their fate is sealed. It was a good fight though. It was a real meat grinder of a fight, this one. It was all about who had the upfront muscle in melee. And while CARN, I think, gave a very good accounting of themselves against Gondor and especially against Khazad-Dum, like that is a fight that you're always going to be on the wrong side of. And while they fought valiantly, CARN, they were always going to lose that one. I think some questionable choices from the Angmar player as well, some questionable committals. The Witchers are such an important tool if you choose to bring them in a 3v5 defense for Angmar, and they only got one good shot off, and most of those units they routed ended up coming back anyway. So in the end it was really just a temporary reprieve. They need to be a little bit more decisive in that regard, and Mordor against Numenor / Mirkwood was kind of inconsequential until the late game, and by which point the attackers already had the momentum, and so it was always going to be difficult to steal that away from them again. Whereas with Swordmasters moving forward, butchering what remains of the routing Mordor units in the town centre. Palace Guard finally coming forward, but they weren't really all that useful in this fight either, so these guys are probably going to be routing at this point. Allegia Pikemen. Yeah, again. Nazgul, routing. Kind of, I think probably Mordor forgot about them as well, actually. He hid them away so that the enemy would forget about them, and in the end, he himself forgot about them. Barrow Wights will, of course, fight to the end, as will the Blackguard, but that's really the only resistance that's being put up at this point. Javelins and axe blows raining down, as the might of Numenor on full display. By this point, the Arad and Iam campaign that I've got going on in Divide and Conquer will be very advanced, possibly even finished, actually. Well, probably not finished, but maybe entering its closing stages. Let's see here. Hiri-Lang. Moving in, moving to completely surround the forces on display. Tram Blackguard. There is the Angmar General with his ridiculously oversized mace. Still, he's going to be able to get a few more kills before the rest of his army follows him, and yeah, in the end the momentum was such that the attackers were always going to pull away a little bit with this one. Such is the way of things, but the Witch King's defence of his fortress at CARN DUM has ultimately been unsuccessful. Been a while since we've seen CARN DUM, never have we seen it in this form either. It looks a little bit less menacing, I have to say, in the snow. It looks almost, if not for the sort of spiky nature of the battlements and the fires going everywhere, it would almost look fairy tale-esque. But maybe if you just remove those spikes and put the fires out, maybe that's what they'll do with this when they try to remodel it. The victorious attackers. Where is the general? I think he just got knocked over, didn't he? There he is. Killing off another Balagaya unit. As he's in and amongst all of the seafarers, which, to be fair, probably not the most high attack units they could have sent after him. Gondor don't have much left, to be fair. Gondor very depleted, the dwarves very depleted. They were the ones that really took the lead here Rohan are very depleted as well. Really, it's no surprise to see most of the surviving attackers are the ranks of Numenor and Mirkwood, because they were definitely the ones that hung back the most, but in the end didn't really make much of a difference either way. That they could have charged into Mordor. I think the result probably would have ended up being the same. In the end though, like, their kill counts suffered for that. Like, they could have charged into Mordor and filled their boots with kills just a little bit more, but in the end it was Khazad-Dum and Gondor that did the lion's share of that. Khazad-Dum especially. Their quality just a little bit too much for CARN, who did put up a brave defence, you have to say. Angmar getting the most kills. Again, the use of those witches is probably one of the things which slanted this battle too far away from the defenders in the end for them to recover from. Mordor with the fewest kills, but to be fair to Joran, like, the enemy that was up against him didn't move in with a great deal. So it's fairly understandable, to be honest, that he didn't get the most kills, because by the late game, of course, they were really under pressure. And in the end, the quality was just a little bit too much for them. So, let's go and see what did the damage for Vivorax's army. So the Nimlothians managed to rack up a good kill count by the end of things. Those armour-piercing spears and their ability to keep themselves alive, very nice. Fountain Guard did okay. You can see them do better than that, but they did okay. That Citadel Guard unit, again, they got a lot, only one kill. So that may have been one of the units that was routed by the witches that actually didn't come back in the end, which is interesting. Gondor Spears, 166 kills on them, which is a good return for a unit of basic spears indeed. But the highest amount of kills, perhaps as is to be expected with Reforged in its current matter, the Athelian Rangers with 215. But yes, no longer in the future will any army, attack or defence, be able to rely on the Rangers, which I think is definitely for the best. I don't know how far out that patch is. It probably is still a fair ways off, to be honest, so we will still have the Rangers doing their thing for now. But I think it's a good thing that they won't be quite as ubiquitous. I think it's more understandable for pikes to be fairly commonplace. It's still something which can be debated, but I do think the time has come for the Rangers to be substantially changed. And it would appear that the development team agrees with that assessment. But regardless, it wasn't, the Rangers by no means were like a really key factor in this battle. It's just an observation that, Gondor had like a sort of fairly front foot assault where they were going in, like, doing the damage primarily in melee, you have to say, because of their army comp more than anything. But even with that, still, the Rangers were the ones that got the highest amount of kills. But that is that. I think the catapult shot was probably the single most impressive feat that happened in this battle. But yeah, big thank you to Vivorax for sending this one to me. Nice to see CARN DUM in its wintry form. Nice to see something we haven't seen before, even if the map itself is rather familiar. And a big thank you to all of the players that were a part of this battle replay as well. Like I said, it could be that the Khazad-Dum campaign is fairly advanced at this point. At the time of recording this, I've only done 2 parts of it, and everyone has declared war on the Khazad-Dum, so once again it's backs to the wall, but it's not quite as desperate a situation as it was with Lothlorien. Just to give some context for when this battle replay comes out, at this point in time we're sort of trying to hold on to the Khazad-Dum territories, and we're going to try and eat away at Harad first and foremost to give a nice economy base. I think that's the plan anyway. I've got some thoughts on that, but it's good, I think, because with regards to that campaign, I think it's good that a lot of people have declared war, because otherwise the Khazad-Dum campaign does threaten to be a little bit simple when you take Angmar first and foremost. So it's probably good that we're sort of experiencing a little bit of pushback in that regard. But yeah, we'll see. That's just something which will develop over the coming weeks, and but from your perspective it will be done already. The channel update should have already been out by this point, certainly, because I think this replay comes out on literally the last day of October, by which point, if I haven't heard anything from the university, I will be marching in there myself. So yeah, the channel update should have already been forthcoming long before this video comes out. So there will already be a good deal of context for how things are going to be moving forward from here. Even if I don't know it yet, at the time this video comes out, the shape of the channel as it progresses through the autumn and the winter, at the very least in the short term, should have its course set. That's the idea anyway. But yeah, like I said, still, like, as I do replays at this point, as I've said, it's a sign that my backlog is actually completely empty, or at least mostly empty, so I'm always going to be on the lookout for replays from this moment onwards. So if you have any good ones that you think would be suitable, do not hesitate to send them in. But once again, big thank you to Vivarax for sending this one to me, and big thank you to all the players for being a part of this one as well. I hope you enjoyed this. What am I talking about? Hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.